People and businesses do a lot of stuff. How do you take this useful stuff that we do and break it down into discrete steps for the agentic workflow to follow? Let's take a look. Take the example of building a research agent. If you want an AI system to write an essay on the topic X, one thing you could do is prompt an LM to have it generate an output directly. But if you were to do this for topics that you want deeply researched, you may find that the LM output covers only the surface level points, or maybe covers only the obvious facts, but doesn't go as deep into the subject as you want it to. In this case, you might then reflect on how you as a human would write an essay on a certain topic. Would you just sit down and start writing? Or would you take multiple steps, such as first write an essay outline, and then search the web, and then based on the input from the web search, write the essay? And as I take a task and decompose it into steps, one question I'm always asking myself is, if I look at these steps 1, 2, and 3, can each of them be done either by an LLM or by a short piece of code, or by a function call, by a tool? And so in this case, I think the LLM can maybe write a decent outline on many topics that I would want it to help me think through. So say probably okay on the first step. And then I know how to use an LLM to generate search terms to search the web. So I would say the second step is also doable. And then based on web search, I think an LLM could input the web search results and write an essay. And so this would be a reasonable first attempt at an agentic workflow for writing an essay that goes deeper than just direct generation. But if I were to then implement this agentic workflow and look at the results, maybe you find that the results still aren't good enough. It's still not yet as deeply thoughtful. Maybe the essays feel a little bit disjointed. This has actually happened to me. Once built a research agent using this as a workflow, but when I read the output, it felt a bit disjointed. The start of the article didn't feel completely consistent with the middle, didn't feel completely consistent with the end. In this case, what you might do is then reflect on how you would change the workflow if you as a human found that the essays were a bit disjointed. One thing you could do is take the third step and further decompose, write the essay into additional steps. So instead of writing the essay all in one go, you might instead have it write a first draft and then consider what parts need revision and then revise the draft. And this would be how I as a human might go about it, to not just write the final essay at my first attempt, but write the first draft and then read over it, which is another step that is pretty decent at. And then based on my own critique of my own essay, I'll revise the draft. So to recap, I started off with direct generation, just one step, decided that wasn't good enough, and so broke that down into 3 steps, and then maybe decided that still isn't good enough and took one of the steps and further broken it down or decomposed it into 3 more steps, resulting in this more complex, richer process for generating an essay. And depending on how satisfied you are with the results of this process, you may choose to even modify this essay generation process further. Let's look at a second example of how to decompose complex tasks into smaller steps. Take the example of responding to basic customer order inquiries. The first step that the human customer service agent might carry out might be to first extract the key information, such as who is this email from, what did they order, and what is the order number. And these are things that an LM could do. So I could just say, let's have an LM do that. The second step would be to then find the relevant customer records. So to write and generate the relevant database queries to pull up the order of what the customer had ordered and when it shipped and so on. I think an LM with the ability to call a function to query the orders database should be able to do that. And then lastly, having pulled up the customer record or the customer order record, I might then write and send a response back to the customer. And I think with the information we pulled up, this third step is also doable with an LM if I give it the option to call an API to send an email. So this would be another example of taking a task of responding to customer email and breaking it down into 3 individual steps where I can look at each of these steps and say, yep, I think an LM or an LM with the ability to call a function to query a database or send an email should be able to do that. Just one last example for the invoice processing. After a PDF invoice has been converted to text, The first step is to pull out the required information, the name of the biller, the address, the due date, the amount due, and so on. And now I should be able to do that. And then if I want to check that the information was extracted and save it in a new database entry, then I think an LM should be able to help me call a function to update the database record. And so to implement this, we'll implement an agentic workflow to carry out basically these two steps. When building agentic workflows, I think of myself as having a number of building blocks. One important building block would be large language models, or maybe large multimodal models if I want to try to process images or audio as well. And LMs are good at generating text, deciding what to call, maybe extracting information. For some highly specialized tasks, I might also use some other AI models, such as an AI model for converting a PDF to text, or for text to speech, or for image analysis. In addition to AI models, I also have access to a number of software tools, including different APIs that I can call to do web search, to get maybe real-time weather data, to send emails, check calendar, and so on. And I might also have tools to retrieve information, to pull up data from a database, or to implement RAG, or retrieval augmented generation, where I can look up a large text database and find the most relevant text. Or I might also have tools to execute code. And this is a tool that lets an LM write code and then run the code on your computer to do a huge range of things. In case some of these tools seem a bit foreign to you, don't worry about it. We'll go through the most important tools in much greater detail in a later module. But I think of a lot of my work when I'm building an agentic workflow as looking at the work that the person or business is doing, and then trying to figure out with these building blocks, how can I sequence these building blocks together in order to carry out the task that I want my system to carry out. And this is why having a good understanding of what building blocks are available, which I hope you have a better sense of by the end of this course as well, will allow you to better envision what agentic workflows you can build by combining these building blocks together. So to summarize, one of the key skills in building agentic workflows is to look at a bunch of stuff that maybe someone does and to identify the discrete steps that it could be implemented with. And when I'm looking at the individual discrete steps, one question I'm always asking myself is, can this step be implemented with either an LM or with one of the tools, such as an API or a function call that I have access to? And in case the answer is no, I'll then often ask myself, how would I as a human do this step? And is it possible to decompose this further, or break this down into even smaller steps that then maybe is more amenable to implementation with an LM or with one of the software tools that I have? So I hope this gives you a rough sense of how to think about task decomposition. In case you feel like you don't fully have it yet, don't worry about it. We'll go through many more examples in this course, and you have a much better understanding of this by the end of this course. But it turns out that as you build agentic workflows, you find that often you build an initial task decomposition, initial agentic workflow, and then you want to keep on iterating and improving on it quite a few times until it delivers the level of performance that you want. And to drive this improvement process, which I found important for many projects, one of the key skills is to know how to evaluate your agentic workflow. So in the next video, we'll talk about evaluations, or evals, and this will be a key component of how you can build and then also keep on improving your workflows to get the performance that you want. Let's talk about evals in the next video.